Hoopball podcast listeners. Are you a fantasy expert and want to write or podcast for Hoopball? Do you have aspirations of covering a team? Are you a master of sales and want to earn some cash on the phones? Well, we've got good news. Hoopball's recruiting. If you think you have what it takes, hit us up at Hoopball Fantasy on Twitter or by emailing teamhoopball@hoop-ball.com. Again, that's at Hoopball Fantasy on Twitter or emailing teamhoopball@hoop-ball.com.
The following is a Hoopball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, at the risk of using up some of our really interesting data, we're going to get into some really interesting data today on the show upcoming. A happy Thursday to you all. It's November the 12th. Trucking along here. We're going to be in 2021 before you know it. We're going to be at NBA opening day before you know it because we are at 40, I believe, is the countdown now. Am I getting that right? Holy crap. Yeah. My goodness. We're 40 days from the start of the NBA season. This is Fantasy NBA Today. I'm Dan Vespers. Thanks as always for tuning in, everybody. This is a Hoopball presentation, which right now is very heavily brought to you by the products for sale over at hoop-ball.com, including, but not limited to, the Draft Guide, the Brewski 150, the Fantasy Pass, new for this year. It's $4.99 a month for that sucker. Here's the thing. I realize that a lot of us are waiting for our Yahoo leagues to open. I get it. So you probably haven't invested in anything yet. But here's the other side of that equation. Hoopball is ahead of the game. We've got our stuff out and ready to go before everybody else. And the price will only go up on things. We always open with our lowest rate. Always. So if you're thinking about getting it, you should be doing it now. And I know it's very easy to just be like, you know what, I'll get it when my league opens, when I can see my league, when I can start organizing some players. Nah, get the Fantasy Pass now. That's the one you want if you're not into betting. If you're into betting too, we've got the Hoopball 360, which is awesome. It's got all of our fantasy stuff. The Fantasy Pass has the Brewski 150, Aaron's unbelievable list that just dominates every year. If you're not using that, you're frankly a buffoon. It has the Draft Guide, which has 400 player breakdowns in it. 400 deep. Hoopball goes. These people are nuts writing this thing. DFS Pass, which I would recommend you guys start getting into because that's how you make the playoffs more fun. That's how you shorten the offseason and bring in some other sports to your enjoyment. It has all of the in-season tools as well. That's the Fantasy Pass at $4.99 a month. Didn't Netflix just go up to like $17? Believe me, you can afford the Fantasy Pass if you're in any paid leagues. Or, you know what, even if you're in a free league and you just want to beat your friends into submission. Fantasy Pass, $4.99 a month. Go to hoop-ball.com. Get it right this second. You can follow me on Twitter at Dan Vespers, DanBesbris, or just Google search Dan from Hoopball. Hoopball on Twitter is at Hoopball Fantasy. Very easy to remember. Go check that out immediately. Not going to spend a ton of time talking about all the things going on at Hoopball. This is a week to talk about product launch, so we've done that. Shout out to our guys over at Hoopball Gaming, by the way, since that is sort of adjunct to what we're talking about right now. Just grinding, man. Putting out pods every day, putting out winners every day, having a blast doing it. And don't worry, we'll tell you about my bookie a little bit later on in the show. We have... Just when you thought, you know, I was mentioning it yesterday, early in the morning before the podcast came out, and then I think I even said something about it on yesterday's show where I was like, look, it feels like the NBA is right at this energy inflection point. And to be perfectly frank, we still have not cleared it. We're not over that inflection point yet. I'm starting to see small chunks of you returning to the podcast. How can you tell, Dan, you ask? Well, when I look to see what downloads look like on an individual day for a podcast. It's actually important to look at downloads on every episode for a given day. So all of a sudden, you log in and you see that someone, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever people have downloaded a show from 3 months ago. You know that that's people that subscribed and haven't logged in a while. Now they logged in and they're like, oh, all these back episodes are downloading at the same time, which is cool. It pumps up the numbers on our end. But more than anything, it's just nice to have you guys coming back. Even if it's slowly, even if it's, a handful at a time, it's getting there. I can feel it. I can feel you guys returning to the insanity. This week will be probably the biggest downloads week we've had since, April, when everybody decided, crap, NBA is not coming back for a while. And that's just the start. It's just the start. So welcome back. Welcome into new folks. I've had some people hit me up on Twitter to say just started listening to the show. Welcome. We're so thrilled to have you. One of the things that's really fun about running a podcast is that there's an enjoyment every time one new person finds the show. So if you like what you're hearing, if these shows are enjoyable, if you end up sticking around, thank you in advance. Please drop a 5-star review on iTunes, the podcast app. That's the one that really drives the market, and I'll be grateful to you forever. From a news standpoint, to sort of dive back into the thread that started that discussion, yesterday in the morning I said I thought that we were right around the NBA's energy inflection point, meaning there is a moment, and it happens every single year. Obviously, most years, the calendar is a little bit different. It happens around, actually about this far in advance, about 40 days before the NBA season. That's about when it happens. So, looking at September of last year it started to ramp up a little bit. And then October of last year, that's when everything just exploded. Once you get to within about 4 weeks or so of the season, things go completely nuts. So I thought, we're probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks away from things really going bananas in NBA circles. Just NBA Twitter going crazy, NBA podcast listenership going crazy. And by the way, I still stand by that remark. I still think that's correct. But I will say that the news that was breaking last night and this morning was maybe something that could fast track it a little bit. For those that are not familiar with what I'm talking about, by the way, news just broke while we're on air that Mike Conley will exercise his team option or his player option for $34.5 million. That's the least surprising thing I've ever seen. That dude was not making $35 million on the open market, so Mike Conley back to Utah. That's not the news I was talking about. The news that broke last night was that Russell Westbrook wants out of Houston, that is guffaw level hilarious. That Westbrook now has decided that he doesn't want to be a part of this insanity. So, breaking down this from a fantasy standpoint is, I think, relatively simple. I could look at all 30 teams individually and tell you which ones his value would go up and which he'd go down, but let's just make our lives easy and say his value would go up almost everywhere if he got traded. He has said he wants to go to a contender where he can also be more of a floor general. I don't see that as a possible destination. Apparently, rumors are already circulating that Kawhi Leonard has reached out, that Westbrook would like to go to a team like the Bucks. If you go to the Bucks, you're not the floor general. That's Giannis. If you go to the Clippers, you're not the floor general. They have 2 of those, including one who you've played with before. I think it's all fluff. We've heard the Knicks. We've heard the Hornets. The rumors are going to swirl around Westbrook because that's now what his camp needs to create. They need to manufacture demand for their guy where there isn't really demand for their guy. Admittedly, adding Westbrook to the Hornets would make them better. Adding Westbrook to the Knicks would make them better. But we've talked about this so many times, and I'm hesitant to do it again, but I know that there are new people listening, so those of you that have been listening to the show for 4 years, just bear with me. I have argued for at least 2.5 or 3 years on this show that Russell Westbrook has the narrowest gap between floor and ceiling of any star player that I can remember in the NBA. Like, any team that he's on is going to be in this very narrow band of success. They're going to be probably from just slightly over 500 to a tiny bit better than that. That's the Westbrook impact. And by the way, that band is shifting lower by the year as he gets older and his body starts to show signs of wear and tear. But at the same time, the heart wants what the heart wants. He wants to go back to being the man, even if it means less success, because that's the only way he goes back to being the man. If he's a team that he's on that could win, he'd have to be a number 2 or number 3 guy. It would have to be similar to a Rockets situation, but with complementary pieces that make more sense. Meaning, James Harden, if he moved around, or having some big men to help Russ with his defensive rebounding numbers to get out and run. The Houston build was not great for his particular game. I'll give him that. I will give Westbrook the notion that that wasn't a very good fit for a number of reasons. And we all saw that coming a year ago. There wasn't a single non-ESPN personality that thought the Harden-Westbrook thing was going to work. I thought that from a longer-term perspective, it was the better move because, you got 4 years younger from Chris Paul to Westbrook, even if there wasn't a large game-to-game impact. And as it turned out, Chris Paul turned back the clock and Westbrook turned the clock forward. So Paul ended up being a far better option this most recent season. But 2 years from today, Westbrook will be better than Chris Paul. And I don't think that's really an arguable point. Because Chris Paul is going to be 38 at that point? And Westbrook will be 34. Not that either one of them is on the upswing, but I think it's pretty safe to say Westbrook at 34 will be a more feared NBA player than Chris Paul at 38, even if neither one of them is that feared at that point. But that's besides the point. For this most recent season, it really didn't work. It was probably never truly going to work. And even a couple days ago, the rumors were like, "Oh, things are afoot in Houston," and then the Shams tweet last night solidified it. But again, almost any place that Westbrook goes, where there's a reasonable chance he could end up, he's not going to the Lakers. I get it. If he goes to the Lakers, his value stays a little bit clunkier, but it's not happening. They're not trading for him. It's not happening. He's not going to the Clippers. If he ends up getting moved here in the next couple of weeks leading into the season, because once you demand a trade, it's pretty damn hard to actually play part of a year with that team. Most of the places he could go, he'll have an uptick in value. If he gets traded to one of those lower-level Eastern Conference teams, he'll be a monster. You'll see the efficiency dip. Hopefully he doesn't go back to chucking three-pointers, but he could end up being an 8-category behemoth, especially if his free throw shooting doesn't go back into the tank completely. So something certainly to keep a very close watch on from a fantasy standpoint. From a reality standpoint, it's just a hell of a story. Russell Westbrook wants out. Nobody wants to be playing with James Harden right now. And, some of that is just the way that they've built their offense to, he gets the ball. Anytime there's not a transition opportunity, it just goes to Harden, and then everybody goes to their spot. I get it. If you're a guy who has been used to controlling the basketball, you're not really going to want to play with Harden for very long. And everybody says the right thing. It'll be fine. We'll figure it out, blah, blah, blah. It just doesn't work. Harden is exclusively an on-ball offensive player. In fact, there are very few players in the entire NBA that are as incredibly useful holding the basketball as James Harden, while at the same time being so completely useless when not holding the basketball as James Harden. His NBA talent level when he's in control of the ball is Hall of Fame level. No question. With the ball in his hands, he's a Hall of Fame basketball player. Off ball, he is probably bottom 5 in the NBA. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there. He stands there watching his teammates go 4-on-5. It's the weirdest damn thing. It's just not in his DNA. So people are like, oh, Harden. So guys get, he gets a bad rap. People say that he's lazy or doesn't play defense and stuff like that, which is just not really true. I mean, he's among the league leaders in steals and blocks, frankly, from a guard position annually. So a lot of that stuff is overblown. But when you literally don't move when you're not holding the basketball, it looks bad, and it is bad, particularly come playoff time where you just can't get away with it. The Lakers exposed the Rockets. They just took the ball out of Harden's hand, forced Westbrook into taking jumpers, and Houston had nothing. They had no solution at that point and just got run out of the gym. Right? Didn't the Lakers lost the first game of that series and then won 4 in a row, right? Am I remembering that properly? They're like, oh, okay, this is what we have to do. And then just boink, done. Who can even match Westbrook's salary is another question. I mean, he's who would even want to? Dude is owed $130 million over the next 3 seasons, this one and 2 more, because he will exercise his option for that 3rd year. There's zero question of that. Who would do such a thing? What team is so deep in the doldrums that they would mortgage basically like 3 whole years? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? The only team, as I look at all 30 in the NBA, where I could make a cogent argument is the New York Knicks. And I'm sure my handful of Knicks fans on this podcast are like, no! And I get it. It doesn't make sense from a long-term perspective. It's a horrible idea because he's the kind of player that will jump you into that race for the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. Your draft picks won't be as good, and you still won't have any chance to advance in the playoffs. But sometimes when you've been horrible as long as the Knicks have, even a little bit of good news can feel like a big thing. Right? Like the Knicks have been atrocious for a long time now. A long time. Let's look at some recent records for the Knicks. You guys want to guess the last time they had a winning record? 2012, 2013. So it's been 8 years ago, the last time they had a winning record. And they were actually pretty decent that year. Knicks went 54-28. They were first in the Atlantic Division. That was a team that had Melo, Marcus Camby, Jason Kidd was still playing. I think he was like 18 years deep at that point. Kenyon Martin was still playing at that point. Here, let's throw a few names at you guys. This will be fun for you. By the way, interesting to note, Iman Shumpert was already in the NBA at that point. That surprised me to see that. Steady state, Kurt Thomas was hanging around. Sheed was at the end of his career at that point. Fat Ray was on that team. Ray Felton, Steve Novak, Pablo Prigioni, Q, Quentin Richardson, Tyson Chandler was in there. Earl Barron. So they were decent. 8 years ago, they were decent. And even that was a little bit of a flash in the pan because they were 54-28 that year. They had a winning record 2 years earlier, 2010-11, when they went 42-40. They had a winning record in the shortened 11-12 season at 36-30. If you move outside of that, it's a long haul. 99-2000 and then 2000-2001, they had winning records. And then the Knicks were 22 games under 500, 8 under, 4 under, 16 under, 36 under. Woof. Back to 16 under, back to 36 under, 18 under, 24 under. So anyway, we're not going to go all the way back in the early mid-90s. We know the Knicks were good at that point. But it's been a haul. It's been a haul for these Knicks. So that's my argument there. It's just be adequate for a couple of years, and I think people will feel better. I don't think anybody expects the Knicks to just leap into championship contention. And from a rebuild standpoint, I don't see them as being that far along. right? Like, it's not like if you didn't trade for Westbrook, you're coming. Hey, this is something that is incredibly important for us here at Hoopball and for anyone out there that's trying to grow a platform. If growing an e-commerce business is your focus, you need a platform that's focused on growth, and that is where Klaviyo comes in. Klaviyo is the ultimate e-commerce marketing platform for online brands of all kinds and all sizes, as evidenced by, look where I'm at. Whether you're just getting started or running a well-known brand, it gives you everything you need to send memorable branded emails, text messages, and more, so you can build strong relationships that keep your customers coming back. With flexible automations, powerful insights, and super precise targeting, that is the wave of the future. Klaviyo is a faster way to turn great ideas into great customer experiences. That's why it's trusted by more than 40,000 brands already, like Living Proof, Huckberry, and 8 Sleep. In fact, on average, Klaviyo customers see a 41% increase in overall revenue within just 5 months. Klaviyo scales with you so you never have to switch. They support everything from garage startups to iconic billion-dollar brands. And if you want to learn more about how you can grow your brand with Klaviyo, visit klaviyo.com/grow to get started with a free trial today. That's Klaviyo, KLAVIYO.com/grow. Again, free trial. You have nothing to lose. Klaviyo.com/grow. Go there now. Up out of the rebuild. I like Mitchell Robinson. What else? Who else can you sell me? You know, I'm not that high on RJ Barrett. I don't like Kevin Knox. Elfrid Payton, retread at point guard, who's been doing fine. But, I mean, you're talking about a team that is truly bad. And then Julius Randle, who, like, is he really going to be the piece of your championship contender? That is a bad team, and not even one where you're like, oh, the prospects look great. So maybe you just go do something to be okay for a couple of years. Otherwise, I can't make the argument. Like, Charlotte was another place that he's been linked to, but they're young and a lot of guys that are getting better and are interesting. Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, Miles Bridges. They have play at PJ Washington. They have guys that I look at and I'm like, this team could actually get slowly a little bit better. Who else would even, what about a team like Orlando? I don't even know if they could make contracts match, but do you give up on Markelle Fultz, pair him up with like an Aaron Gordon and just say, here, Westbrook and Vooch, this is my duo now? I guess I can make an argument there. There's not a single team in the Western Conference that I look at them and think, you should put Westbrook on that team and see what happens. Not one. Not one. 15 teams, not one makes sense with Russ. And if you wanted more NBA news, this morning a report surfaced that Victor Oladipo was basically asking other teams, quote, can I come play with y'all, in front of his teammates. This was a report from Jay Michael, who covers the Pacers for the Indianapolis Star. And then the tweet that went viral was from a dude named Jordan Heck. Brutal. That's brutal. Victor Oladipo, we knew he wanted out, but to hear that he was doing this all of last year, he was terrible last year. He said, I can come play. Can I come play with y'all? If I'm on one of those other teams, I'm looking back at him like, not like that, you can't. Gimping around all year. I get it. I mean, he had a bad injury, and I'm not going to hold that against him, but that's pretty rough when you're not even bringing something to your own team and you're asking out. Dude needs to give his team a chance. I don't like this at all. I get it. We're in the era of player empowerment, but you ain't going to too many places that are going to put you in a better spot. And it's not like Oladipo's been around for 15 years and is championship chasing. He had one really, really good year in Indiana with Indiana, and we all were like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe he's finally coming into his own. And then the injury bug struck. Some other stuff regressed. It sort of held on for another year. I don't know, man. That's rough. he's a guy that could see his fantasy value bounce in a lot of different directions if he does get moved. I don't, if I'm the Pacers, I'm just hanging on here and telling him, figure this out. Figure it out, man. You got good teammates. You got a good thing going. Pacers have a really nice starting lineup, actually. Sabonis, Miles Turner, TJ Warren, Victor Oladipo, Malcolm Brogdon. I'd be envious of that starting lineup if I'm a lot of teams in the NBA. If Oladipo's like, yeah, I want out, maybe you can get something for him. But if I'm the Pacers, I'm telling him, look, you play your butt off here at the beginning of the year. You look valuable. Maybe we can get you off this roster. Maybe we can get somebody else who's an NBA caliber guy and get some assets in the process. But we ain't trading you right now. Not while you've looked horrible for a year and a half. Which is the situation, unfortunately, the Rockets put themselves in. They're now going to have to move Westbrook, who had a pretty good regular season, but got undressed in the playoffs like his superstar teammate. NBA. The NBA, it handles rumor mill better than anyone. I mean, it's just not close. Don't you love it? Don't you just love it? I told you guys about what's going on in Hoopball already, and please do get the Fantasy Pass. Again, it's just $4.99 a month. It's going to look, if you're listening to this show, then you want to win your fantasy league. This is the other way to do it. You get your draft guide, you get your projections, you get your B150, you get your in-season stuff, you get access all year long to Hoopball's best writers and best podcasters. The Fantasy Pass, $4.99 a month. But also, we got to sell some other things because we got corporate sponsors too. MyBookie.ag. Don't worry, guys. I'm keeping my eyes glued for the next monster promo, and I firmly believe that it's coming. Basically, as soon as NBA or college basketball gets close, you're going to see some of those odds boosts. You're going to see some other stuff pop up. They've got these specialty parlays. They've got Masters tournament odds right now. You got to get over there. You can bet on Thursday night football. You can bet on the Thursday night college slate, Colorado State, Boise State tonight. What do I know about it? Nothing. But you can still do it. They got prop bets. They got squares. They got survivor tournaments. They got free blackjack tournaments. That's what I've been crushing lately. I got one entry in a tournament that's actually hanging on a little bit right now. So, cross your fingers for Danny Boy. Make sure when you sign up at MyBookie, you use promo code HOOPBALL. As I said before, I'm pretty sure you can play the blackjack tournaments without even making a deposit. So that's pretty cool. And then if you do make a deposit, I believe with Bitcoin, it's a minimum of either 20 or 25. With credit card, I know it's a minimum 45 deposit because that's how I bought in and was sort of checking things out a little bit. I've been with MyBookie since January. I've had zero issues of any kind. They've been fantastic. Cashing out is easy. Right now, I'm just waiting on election results to get certified because I had a whole bunch of money on various election props, and I hit them all. So good for me. That's what I get for studying that stuff, breathing heavily for the last couple of years, cashing some tickets. So sign up, mybookie.ag. Promo code is HoopBall. Bet with us, then get paid. You can, again, cash out. Make your money back and cash out, and then just play with the house money. I don't care what you do with it. Go have some fun over there. Here's where we're going to start. A good friend of the show, Hidden Upside on Twitter, has been running leagues and has been updating a chart with ADPs from different 8 and 9 category leagues. So they are blended together right now. But I thought some of this data was useful, so I'm going to throw it out there to you guys, and we'll break a little bit of it down. Although today, I mostly just want to get the information out there. And then perhaps, if this, barring any other massive NBA news, we can sort of dovetail this discussion into tomorrow and then through the weekend. Because I do think that this is something that folks are going to get. And those weekend shows, they've got a little bit more shelf life than the other ones. So here's some information on a handful of drafts. It's not a ton. It's not like when you get Yahoo ADPs and it's built based on 5,000, 10,000 drafts. These are 10 pro drafts, generally for head-to-head leagues. So if you notice something is a little bit out of whack, that might be why. And it's 8 and 9 category numbers mushed together, which is, by the way, that's also how Yahoo does their ADP. They don't separate the two. No points leagues data in here. thank goodness, because that's how ESPN does their rankings, and that really biffs things. So let's run through some of the names here, and then tomorrow we'll come back around and we will analyze where some of these guys are. Top 10 right now is James Harden, Anthony Davis, Luka Doncic, Karl-Anthony Towns, Giannis, Nikola Jokic, Damian Lillard, Trae Young, Jason Tatum, and Kawhi Leonard. A couple of interesting things in that grouping, more so on the names being left out than the names making it in, because you can make a pretty reasonable argument in one format or the other, or both, that all 10 of those guys are worthy of being selected that soon. But as I give you the next 10 names, you'll hear a couple of the guys that I thought, oh, interesting. Pick 11 is LeBron, Steph Curry at 12, Devin Booker at 13, Bam Adebayo. By the way, we also have some slight movement on some of these names as well, based on recent news and recent drafts being added to the mix. 15 was KD, Ben Simmons 16, Bradley Beal at 17, Joel Embiid, then John Collins and Paul George. That's your top 20. This is where I'm expecting Paul George is going to go. It seems like he's a late second round pick. Remains a guy that we are keeping an eye on as this podcast goes. Very surprised to see Steph Curry going at 12. Very, because he had actually played before the season was turned off last year in March. And this is, to me, the most important part, it wasn't foot stuff. It wasn't leg stuff with him where he needs to rebuild conditioning. It was hand. It was his non-shooting hand. Warriors are going to be in it to win it. I think Steph goes earlier in most drafts as we add more drafts to the mix. But if he really is going this late, mind blown. And then KD at 15. This is frankly more where I thought he should be going, and then I'm seeing him go more like 10, 11 in some spots. So let's keep an eye on him as well. 21 through 30, and again, by the way, we're going to be doing deeper analysis on this stuff tomorrow. Kristaps Porzingis, Russell Westbrook, who's been falling, Jimmy Butler at 23. I've got to think a lot of that has to do with how many games he missed last year, but some of it should have to do with what he's going to miss. Donovan Mitchell, Kyrie Irving. Irving at 25, by the way, is notable. Yusuf Nurkic at 26, Rudy Gobert, 27, Brandon Ingram, this is too early for me, at 28, Zach LaVine at 29, and Nikola Vucevic at 30. I'm super into Vooch at 30, but again, I'm not going to spend too much time on any one of these guys right now. DeAndre Ayton at 31, Jamal Murray, Pascal Siakam, Domantas Sabonis, that's pretty early for Demo. Andre Drummond at 35, Drew Holiday 36, that's pretty low for him. But who knows? Maybe he gets moved. Freddie VanVleet at 37, Rob Covington at 38, Shea at 39, and John Morant at 40. Kyle Lowry is at 41. Interesting, although there are rest day issues potentially there, even though we do love him as a guy that falls too far every time. De'Aaron Fox at 42, Chris Paul at 43. That one completely blew my mind. That is how terrified people are of a potential trade. If he really does fall that far, you have to take him. I thought people were going to be taking him in the 15 range, 15 to 20. So this is actually this is striking. And the head-to-head element does, I think, play a bit of a role there. But he was one of the best head-to-head players in the NBA this last year. And even if he gets traded, I don't think that hurts his ability to actually get into ball games down the stretch. If anything, he goes to a team that is competing down the stretch. JJJ at 44, D'Angelo Russell at 45, Lonzo 46, Zion 47, DeMar DeRozan at 48. I could probably consider taking him a little earlier than that. Chris Middleton, very low at 49, and Miles Turner at 50. And let's keep chugging along here. I think this is really... I want to list the top 100. You guys can have your immediate reactions. Maybe we'll talk a bit about it on Twitter. And that to me feels like a pretty good schedule for this thing. Mitchell Robinson at 51. Clint Capella at a extraordinarily low 52. Jaylen Brown, Devontae Graham, Christian Wood. 56 is Ricky Rubio. Then Kemba, super low, not surprising there. JV at 58. Dre at 59. And CJ McCollum, always safe, at 60. Marcus Smart starts the next batch. Marcus Smart, TJ Warren, John Wall. That's an interesting little note on kind of where he's been popping up. LaMarcus Aldridge at 64. Thomas Bryant at 65. DeJounte Murray, Kevin Love, Brooke Lopez, Malcolm Brogdon, and Klay Thompson. It's pretty low for Klay. Jared Allen, 71. Too early for me. they're going to play too much DeAndre Jordan. I can almost guarantee it. Tobias Harris at a ridiculous 72. By the way, that's nuts. He should get a bump in head-to-head for playing in every damn game. Kelly Oubre at 73. Mikal Bridges, 74. Wendell Carter Jr. Buddy Hield, Victor Oladipo, Kobe White, Julius Randle, and Gordon Hayward. That's your top 80. We'll do 20 more names here. Aaron Gordon, who's been moving up the board. Curse you, foul world. This, I thought, might be the year we could steal him at a super late price. OG Anunoby at 82. Colin Sexton, Derek White, and Lauri Markkanen. Get you to 85. Hoopball's prodigal son, Rashawn Holmes at 86. Terry Rozier. Karis LeVert, way too high, unless you think he's getting traded. Davis Bertans at 89, and Steven Adams at 90. And the last 10 we'll talk about or give you this morning. Danilo Gallinari at 91. Markelle Fultz at 92. People are starting to believe a little bit there. Eric Bledsoe, way late at 93. Brandon Clark, Bojan Bogdanovic at 95. Marvin Bagley, Mike Conley, Hassan Whiteside, Bogdan Bogdanovic. Got him clustered here. Bogdanovic grouping. And then Andrew Wiggins is number 100. A couple of notes here on guys you're finding outside the top 100 on this particular list. And again, this is not with 10,000 sample size, but put it in the back of your head. Evan Fournier, Blake Griffin, Montrezl Harrell, Michael Porter Jr. outside the top 100, and Otto Porter Jr. That really surprised me. I mean, I think we see Michael Porter Jr. going closer to 50 in drafts as we get closer to opening day, because I think you start to see big sites put him on their sleeper list, like no one was paying attention during the bubble, and all of a sudden his ADP is just going to crash through the roof. It's going to, you're not getting him at this point. Other notable names outside the top 100 on this one, Dennis Schroeder, because if Chris Paul gets moved and he doesn't, there's all sorts of goodies there. Norman Powell at 121. Serge Ibaka at 122. I think he probably signs at a place where he's going to see reasonable chunk of minutes. My guy Daniel Tice at 127, although I get it, in 8 category spots, that's going to depressive value. But I don't know. I don't believe that the Celtics are grabbing a center until they actually do it. Danny Ainge tends to be pretty conservative with stuff like that. Will Barton at 129. He was great last year. Terrence Ross, 134. He finished the season outstanding. So there's a lot of really interesting falling dudes as per usual. And that is where we'll put a pin in things on this Thursday, because I want to save the deep dives on some of this data for tomorrow. And, of course, we'll be spending a lot of time on ADPs, specifically from Yahoo Fantasy, once they get their stuff open. That will truly be the day that we celebrate, because right now, most of us can't get into our leagues. Womp womp. Manscaped.com is our final sponsor here to talk about on this episode of Fantasy NBA Today. Manscaped.com. Promo code is HoopBall20. Please do check out the Weed Whacker and their premium nail kit. They've given us permission now to really hype some of their non-lawnmower products on the show, and I love them. First of all, they're cheaper. I shouldn't say cheaper. That's not the right word. That's bad marketing. They're more affordable. The price is lower. They're not a cheaper device. They're still great, super high-quality device. They are less expensive than the lawnmower, which is the traditional sideburn trimmer, or trimmer overall. The Weed Whacker, ear and nose hair, and then the luxury nail kit, as I mentioned yesterday, is only $20. It's awesome. It's great. You got to get one. Use the promo code. That'll get you 20% off, so that would go down to $16 and free shipping on your orders. Do it now. Manscaped.com. They're a great partner for us. I love the rep we've got over there. Shout out to Kyle at Manscaped for hooking up this amazing partnership. He loves basketball. We love working with these guys. Go throw a couple of coins their way. But again, if you're going to buy anything this week in particular, make it the Fantasy Pass at hoop-ball.com. $4.99 a month, guys. That is nothing. It's nothing. There is, during draft season, you're locked in for 6 months because you're getting the draft guide and the Brewski 150. So there's this sort of front-end thing. The draft guide by itself this year is $20. And the Fantasy Pass for $30 gets you the draft guide, early Brewski 150 access, and the entire season, basically. Well, 6 months from now, so it'll get you to mid-May, which is almost the entire season, I believe, this year, of all of our in-season premium stuff. It is an unbeatable deal anywhere in the fantasy landscape. Tell me you can find a place where you get their guide, their list, and all of their in-season tools for $29.94. Find me one. You can't. You can't. Not with a 400-player draft guide, a Brewski 150, and Discord chats and live video chats and projections and Dynasty and all that stuff. I mean, the list is so long I can't do it on the show. So please, guys, please, $4.99 a month, go get it. Do it now before the price goes up in any meaningful way. Even if your league isn't open yet at Yahoo, just get it in advance. It ain't going to hurt you. You're locked in. I'm Dan Bespers. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Again, tomorrow we will deep dive the ADP data we have so far from our boy Hidden Upside. That should be a fun one. That'll take us through the weekend. And by Monday, who knows? We will have, I'm sure there'll be crazy stuff happening because it's the NBA and it's ramp-up time. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.